My family, Dad, Mom, my younger brother, and I Anna Chen, whose name has been changed, live in a quiet residential area in suburban Phoenix, Arizona. It's a normal neighborhood, with houses with yards, low fences, and clean streets. Life here was quite peaceful. Until things started with the house next door. The house next door to mine is a little older than the other houses on the street. It looks a bit run down, with faded paint and a slightly overgrown front yard. Although not abandoned, it always has a quiet and mysterious atmosphere. And there lived a woman. Her name is Mrs. Willow, whose name has been changed. Mrs. Willow is an elderly woman who lives alone. We rarely see her go out during the day. When we do see her, she usually walks quietly into her house, not talking to anyone. People in the neighborhood don't talk much about Mrs. Willow. They just say she's a strange person. And perhaps her mind isn't quite right. The rumors stop there. My family and I also don't interact much with Mrs. Willow. Just casual greetings when there's a chance. Mrs. Willow's house is always silent during the day. No noise, no sign of life, as if the house also carries the same isolation as its owner. We don't know much about Mrs. Willow's past, or why she lives alone and seems a little different. My family's life continued as usual, until night fell, and unusual things began to happen. And it all originated from Mrs. Willow's house, right next door to mine. This mysterious neighbor had become a terrifying part of our lives. And the horrifying story had just begun. The peaceful life in our suburban Phoenix neighborhood began to be disrupted by something terrifying, a sound. About a few weeks after we moved into this neighborhood, or perhaps Mrs. Willow started exhibiting stranger behavior. I don't remember the exact time, but one night, when the whole family was asleep, I was startled awake by a strange sound. It was laughter. That laughter wasn't normal laughter. It was a terrifying laughter. The laughter sounded very high-pitched, piercing, like a woman laughing madly. It echoed in the silence of the late night, coming from the house next door. That laughter sent shivers down my spine. It was full of evil, full of madness, and a little bit of suffering. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, listening to the scary laughter. I tried to tell myself that I was just imagining it, or that the old house was creaking. But that laughter was too real, too clear. It came from Mrs. Willow's house. I heard my parents also wake up and quietly talk to each other in the next room. It seemed they heard it too. The laughter lasted for a while, then stopped abruptly. An eerie silence enveloped the neighborhood. That night, I couldn't sleep anymore. I lay in bed, eyes wide open in the darkness, listening. The following nights, that terrifying laughter appeared again. Always at night, when everyone was asleep. Sometimes it echoed at midnight. Sometimes it echoed near dawn. It had no fixed time, but it always echoed from Mrs. Willow's house, breaking the peace of the night. That laughter sounded very scary, like someone enduring extreme torment, or like someone was happily reveling in something very evil. That sound from the darkness had become a part of my family's nighttime life. It was haunting. It caused fear. We didn't know why Mrs. Willow laughed like that. Was she awake, or was it not her? We tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe Mrs. Willow had a mental illness? Maybe she was watching TV or listening to the radio loudly? But that laughter was too strange, too terrifying to be explained by normal reasons. The terrifying laughter began, and it had brought fear into our home. The terrifying laughter from Mrs. Willow's house had become a nightly haunting for my family. The feeling that our neighbor, or something there, was laughing eerily in the dark made us very uneasy. We tried to ignore that laughter. Tried to go to sleep. But it was too scary to ignore. And then, things became even more terrifying. One night, after hearing the terrifying laughter from the house next door, I couldn't sleep. I decided to go to the window of my room, looking towards Mrs. Willow's house. The house was pitch dark, with only the faint street light dimly illuminating the front. I looked up at the upstairs window of Mrs. Willow's house. That window was also pitch dark. I stared intently, trying to see through the darkness. And then, I saw, in one of the upstairs windows, there was a figure, a blurry figure, standing there. My heart pounded. Who was standing at the upstairs window at this hour? Was it Mrs. Willow? The figure stood there silently, looking down. Then, I looked closer. I saw the face of the figure. A pale, gaunt face. Her eyes, wide open, looking straight down. And on that face, was a smile. A very wide, very terrifying smile. That smile didn't look happy at all. It was full of madness, full of evil, and a little bit of horror. That smile matched the terrifying laughter I had heard. I froze in terror. My whole body trembled. That woman was standing at the upstairs window of the house next door, looking down at my house. And she was smiling, smiling terrifyingly. Eyes from the upstairs window. That terrifying smile. I quickly pulled my head back into the room, closed the window tightly, and locked it. I stood leaning against the wall, gasping for breath, trying to regain my composure. But the image of Mrs. Willow's terrifying smile from the upstairs window was deeply etched in my mind. The following nights, my family, especially me, because my room was closer to that house, often saw Mrs. Willow standing at the upstairs window at night. She was always standing there, silent, looking down at our house, and occasionally giving that terrifying smile. That smile, combined with the terrifying laughter we heard every night, created extreme fear. We felt as if we were being watched, being mocked by our neighbor. Eyes from the upstairs window. The terrifying smile. The mysterious neighbor wasn't just strange anymore. She was terrifying, and that terror came from right next door to our house. The terrifying laughter and the sight of Mrs. Willow standing at the upstairs window looking down at our house had become a constant haunting. That fear affected my family's sleep and daily life. My parents were also very worried. They tried to find out more about Mrs. Willow, asking other neighbors, but they only knew vague rumors about her strangeness and possibly mental illness. We didn't dare confront Mrs. Willow directly. Her gaze and smile were too terrifying. Mrs. Willow's strange actions became clearer and more frightening. She wasn't just standing at the upstairs window at night anymore. Some nights, we saw her standing at the ground floor window, looking straight into our house. Sometimes, when we were inside the house, we suddenly felt a very strong sense of being watched. Looking out the window, we would see Mrs. Willow standing at her house window, staring at our house, with that terrifying smile on her face. Some nights, the terrifying laughter didn't just echo from inside Mrs. Willow's house anymore. Sometimes, it sounded like it was coming from right outside our house window. as if Mrs. Willow was standing right outside our house, looking in and laughing. We closed the doors tightly, drew the curtains, but still felt watched, seen through. Sometimes, we heard strange noises from the direction of Mrs. Willow's house during the day. Sounds of breaking, objects being thrown. Mrs. Willow's strange actions weren't limited to laughing and staring. Sometimes, we saw her doing confusing things. For example, once, we saw Mrs. Willow standing at the upstairs window, waving strangely. Not a greeting wave, but a kind of frantic wave, as if trying to say something, or as if gesturing. Another time, we saw Mrs. Willow throw something small from the upstairs window into her yard, and then laugh again. These actions made us puzzled and scared. We didn't understand what Mrs. Willow wanted. Did she have any intentions? We started to suspect. Was Mrs. Willow just simply mentally ill? Or was something else happening? Perhaps she was haunted? Or perhaps there was something else in Mrs. Willow's house, and that thing was affecting her? The figure at the window, the strange actions, the terrifying laughter, all created a terrifying picture of our neighbor and the house next door. We lived in constant fear and unease. The mad woman next door wasn't just a strange neighbor anymore. She was the source of horror. The fear and unease from Mrs. Willow's strange actions and terrifying laughter intensified. We knew we couldn't continue living like this. The feeling of being watched and threatened from right next door was horrifying. My parents decided they needed to find out more about Mrs. Willow and her house. They contacted local authorities or social services to inquire about Mrs. Willow's condition, whether she needed medical or psychiatric help. However, information was very limited. We only knew that Mrs. Willow had been living in that house for a very long time, and she lived alone. Her medical records were private. We couldn't find out if she had any illnesses. We also tried to find out more about the history of house number 13. Mrs. Willow's house. Searching on neighborhood history websites, old newspaper articles, we found some notable information. This house number 13 had a quite long history, and a few unpleasant incidents had happened there in the past. There was a story about a murder that happened in house number 13 many years ago. Before Mrs. Willow moved in, a young woman was brutally murdered right in that house. The case was never fully solved, and the killer was never caught. Hearing this, I shivered. A murder in the house next door? Could it be that the spirit of the murdered woman still haunted that house, and that was affecting Mrs. Willow? Or perhaps, did Mrs. Willow have something to do with that murder? Those terrifying thoughts kept swirling in my head. The secret of the house next door, number 13, seemed to be revealed, and it was more terrifying than we had imagined. Mrs. Willow's strange actions, her terrifying laughter, were they because she was haunted by the victim's spirit? Or perhaps, she was the perpetrator herself, and that madness was due to guilt? We didn't know, but the connection between Mrs. Willow, house number 13, and the old murder created a horrifying picture. In the darkness of number 13, a dark secret was hidden, and that secret was directly affecting my family's life. We lived in fear, not knowing if our terrifying neighbor was a victim or a perpetrator of an old tragedy, or simply a mad woman. But whatever the reason, the terror was real. The truth about the old murder in house number 13 and the mysterious connection to Mrs. Willow's strange actions brought my family's fear to its peak. We lived in a never-ending nightmare. Right next door to our home, Mrs. Willow's terrifying laughter still echoed nightly. More terrifying than ever now that we knew about the history of that house. Each laugh was like an evil mockery. The image of Mrs. Willow standing at the window, looking down at our house with that empty gaze and terrifying smile, became more haunting when we considered the possibility that she was either haunted by the victim's spirit, or worse, the perpetrator. We tried to avoid looking towards house number 13 at night, but curiosity and fear kept urging us. Sometimes, we would look towards the upstairs window of that house, and see Mrs. Willow's terrifying figure standing there. Some nights, the noises from house number 13 became more intense. Sounds of objects being violently thrown. Screaming, not just laughter. Struggling sounds, as if some kind of battle was taking place inside that house. We didn't know if it was Mrs. Willow causing it herself, or if something else was in that house and interacting with her. Horror next door is real. We lived in constant anxiety, not knowing what would happen next. Would Mrs. Willow harm us? Would something in that house get out? We considered moving, but selling the house in this situation would be very difficult. We were trapped right next to house number 13, which harbored a terrifying secret and a terrifying neighbor. Eyes from the devil's window. Whoever Mrs. Willow is, she carries some kind of evil and madness that sends shivers down our spines. The story of Mrs. Willow in house number 13 has become a constant warning about the danger that can lurk right next to us. Behind closed doors, we don't know if the secret of house number 13 will ever be fully revealed. We only know that every night, when the terrifying laughter echoes from the house next door, and when we see the terrifying figure at the window, fear envelops us. Horror next door is something we have to live with, and the truth about Mrs. Willow in her house, perhaps, will forever remain a terrifying mystery. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and unexplained mysteries, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.